What is up, everyone? I know many of you have been following along my story of RV woes that I call the Soggy Saga, and I just got it back from the manufacturer, so I wanted to give you guys an update. If you've been following along, you can skip ahead a couple minutes. For those that haven't been following along, I'll give a quick overview of everything that's happened up to this point involving the Soggy Saga. So, let's start off. First off, I got this RV. This is a Thor Outlaw 29H. This is a 2017 model that I got in September of 2016. So it's a model year ahead. I got it brand new. Was super excited about it. We just got back from a road trip that we did in a car, and I was excited to do road trips in the RV in the future. So super excited. Got this thing. Got it back to our driveway. And after doing some research, I saw that basically you should just do a really thorough inspection of everything. It comes with a 1-year warranty, so you want to go through every nut and bolt, every drawer, every slide, everything, and just kind of look it over to find all the manufacturing defects so that you can send it back to the dealer and they can take care of it within that 1 year before your warranty expires. So I did that. You can look at my other videos about all that stuff, my thorough walkthroughs and stuff like that, talk about the nitpicky stuff that I found in that process. But the one big one that I'm going to talk about today, I thought was just a minor thing on my first list, and it ended up escalating into the big thing that has now been a 2-year event and is going to continue, I hope, because everything is not right yet. That's what I thought was going to be a small event, was the fact that this window up above the bed cab over area, this is like the first week I had it in our driveway. I had it parked, I had the RV parked on our driveway slightly downhill nose first, and it rained a couple times, and basically I saw some water droplets coming down below this window, and it was to the point it pulled up somewhere that when I pulled out of the driveway and got to an uphill portion, basically it managed to flow from wherever it had pooled to underneath here and rained down on the driver's seat right here. And so that was my first inclination that something was wrong. It should not rain on the driver whenever they pull out of the driveway. So I added to my list of 40 that this window needs to be resealed. I assumed the leak was just this window not being tightened well enough, or just kind of a bad design. The water flow off from the top seems to pour straight down onto this window with no gutter or anything right there. So it just seemed like a bad design in my opinion, and I thought that water was managing to flow into the window and seeping out through the bottom. Turns out that was not actually the case. The dealer tried to repair things by replacing this window, resealing it and tightening it up. They gave it back to me and it was still leaking. I had to go back and forth to the dealer multiple times to try to figure this out. And in this process, it was leaking so much that things were starting to rot across the bottom of this wall. And this platform here on the top layer was obviously getting rotted and molded and gross. The frames for the bed storage areas were all getting molded and rotted. This board across the back was getting molded and rotted, and things were just getting more and more damaged the longer it took to repair the leak. So basically, I would give it to the manufacturer. It would basically sit in their lot for months at a time. And so this thing has been like in the repair process for, out of that first year that I had a warranty on it, it was in their parking lot for 6 months of that year. So this was all the way up in the Akron, Cleveland area. I live in Pittsburgh. So basically I would drop the RV off. They would fix it for months at a time. One time, their idea of fixing was to just cover up all the rot and mold that was on this piece. They cut another Luan sheet and just glued it right on top. So almost immediately when I got this thing back and started inspecting, the first thing I did was look and see if that's what they did. And all I had to do was pull up this little bit here, and I could see a second layer of Luan on top. Peeled that up, and sure enough, all the mold was there, and now it just had a nice dark sandwich area to grow even better. So that was really frustrating. I had to send it back to the Cleveland, Akron area for them to do another repair. And I said, can you actually replace all the damaged stuff, not just cover it up? And if you could make it stop leaking while you're at it, that'd be great. So this time they just cut the Luan along the edges and took out the old stuff and put in new ones. But because of the way these are formed, that is not really a true replacement. They there's still water damage in all the insulation and bottom layers of this this platform here, and all they were doing was replacing the very top bit of that. In the process, they measured things wrong. It was all bubbled up and down. It would make popping sounds whenever I got onto the bed, and it's just it was a mess. It was embarrassing. So I ended up pulling all that up and replacing it with my own. I got some of the plastic composite stuff for bathrooms from Home Depot and used that to cover it up. I stripped out all of the foam insulation that was in there, all the styrofoam, and replaced it with real blue insulation foam for household stuff, and just made it usable again. So again, the bottom layer of that was still getting all rotted and molded and was threatening delamination of the bottom of the fiberglass on the outside. So I definitely didn't like fix it, but I just wanted to make things usable again. So I replaced it with that. It was a waterproof top thing, so since they never actually fixed the leak, that at least kind of made it somewhat waterproof there. So yeah, so anyway, after that whole year of my warranty expiring, and through that year, 6 months of that being in the dealer's parking lot, of them fixing it and just kind of covering up stuff and doing gross things, I finally, once my warranty expired, said, guys, it's still leaking, it's still damaged, you didn't do anything I asked you to. At this point, you owe me a new RV. At which point, they brought in the manufacturer into the conversation. So the manufacturer, Thor, stepped in, and it was promising at first. Basically, it sounded like they finally actually respected a customer and supported their product, and were kind of proud of their product, and so they were excited to fix it and do it right for me and really take care of things. After talking with them back and forth for quite a while, we decided that I was going to, they were going to transport it from my house to Indiana to their manufacturing plant and do figure out what needed done and do the work to it, and then transport it back to me. Okay, so the original time period where we were trying to go do that, it was going to be back to me before my sister's family borrowed the RV for a road trip that they did, but it was going to be cutting things too close. So we decided to flip the order. They go on their road trip. The transport was going to happen from their house, and then they were going to bring the RV back to Pittsburgh once they were done with it. So that gave a little bit more flexibility for how much time they needed to spend on it. Real quick, before we go outside, one more thing I forgot to mention is while I was doing some of the destruction to kind of get down to the root of all this and do some deeper analysis, I found that basically the water wasn't coming from the window at all. That was just the gap that was bringing it into the interior of the RV. The leak was actually happening all across this top edge. And not only was it happening on this top edge, it was also happening on this top edge. And the water would basically seep through the wall, because basically these walls are just panels on both sides, aluminum supports in between, and then a whole bunch of styrofoam insulation. And so the water was seeping through all that styrofoam slowly from the roof all the way down to the bottom. So that means that it's basically soaking into this whole wall until it got all the way down to this panel down here, at which point it hit its surface, and so it had a gap along the bottom of the wall and it was flowing out. Usually this thing is parked ever so slightly nose down, and so the water would then flow to the nose and was actually pooling up. And I actually had standing water at one time when I took off this panel over here so I could really see things. And there was literally, I could see water flowing in and filling up a puddle that filled up this entire nose across the front here. So you can imagine soaking through all this styrofoam. It's touching both the inside and the outside layers of the wood fiberglass stuff on both sides, that side and this side. It's soaking in through the top, flowing all the way through that wall, soaking all of it, and then finally becoming visible at the bottom of that, flowing to the nose and rotting and molding all the wood in the process. So you can imagine there's a lot of damage in the wall, both the inside and the outside on both sides. And the inside layer, you could see the original one, you could see bubbles forming in this like wallpaper type stuff that they have on the inside layers. You can see bubbles forming from the water. And on the outside, you couldn't see it yet, but in due time, all of that water and moisture is going to cause what's called delamination, where basically the outside layers separate from the structure of the wall. And so then that's where you get all the wavy, gross stuff on the outside of the RV. So basically, this whole wall and that whole wall on the other side were at risk of delamination, rot, mold, mildew. Okay, those were my 4 main concerns for all of this. Okay. So now we can go outside and talk about this more. So as I mentioned, I discovered that the source of the leak is basically this top edge here, and the same thing on the other side. So the water is going across the roof, getting to that edge, finding some hole in the sealant or whatever, and seeping down through the roof, or through the wall, all the way down to the floor, and then getting in there. So everything in this section is most likely on the inside and outside layers, moldy, rotted, risking delamination, mildew covered, and gross. So at least this section needs replaced. So when I was talking to the manufacturer originally about what they were going to repair, they explained to me that the way these walls are made, or basically this entire wall is made in one piece. They sandwich the aluminum supports in between 2 layers of Luan on the inside and the Luan with fiberglass on the outside, and all the styrofoam in between all the aluminum supports. So the only way to properly replace this damaged section right here would be to replace this whole side wall, which I thought is what we agreed on at the very beginning. I thought that was their plan, was basically just lift the roof up and replace this whole side and replace the other side. The other side is has a slide from here to here, and so this side would be a little bit more time consuming because they got to get the slide out before they can replace it, but less material. So again, I was picturing them replacing this whole, well, that section and this section as one piece. It is still one piece because you can see the bottom, it's all continuous. So I was expecting them to replace all of that. Along with that, the main part of things would be this. This is where all the water's been seeping down to, was this bottom layer here under the bed. And so that is the key part that definitely needed replaced. That's where all the water's just been soaking and getting extra gross and rotted. And again, risking delamination because the bottom of this could separate if it gets moisture in there. And so then the outside layers just kind of turn to a loose, bubbly sort of thing. So, and on top of that, there was one more big promise. And that big promise is the roof. So, like I talked about, I found that the origin of the water was some gaps in the sealant along here. And you can watch one of my last videos when I actually had this opened up and really looking at where I'm almost certain all the water was coming from. I had some other ideas for where it was coming from, but this one I think was it. Basically, I actually pulled up this trim and found gaps underneath of it and bolts that weren't properly sealed and just ugly stuff like that. So anyway, I'm pretty sure the water was getting in along this edge here. And actually, when I did take things apart, I lifted up the roof liner right here, put my hand underneath, and could feel soggy wood. This whole section right here, I could, as far as I could get my hand back, I felt soggy wood. And it hadn't rained for a few days, so it was still just sitting there being soggy for a while. And then I have to have the same assumption, since water was coming in both sides. This side is also a similar thing. I didn't want to pull this trim up until I was really certain about things, so I never got down to it as far on this side, but I definitely proved on that side that the water was seeping not only down the wall, but kind of wicking through the roof and getting this all wet. And I can also, when I step on this, you can feel it's soft and soggy. And so those were the big promises that they made. I thought they were replacing the entire sidewalls, the entire base of the bed area, and at least this section of roof. So now that you know what the process has been up to this point and what the big promises were for this, we'll get to what they actually did. So since I have had this back for a day or two now, I did do some additional research and went back and read the service contracts and stuff that they that explained what they were going to do, and I realized that the original bit was a bit of misunderstanding on my part. They said they were going to replace the wing walls, which I, after hearing the explanation of how these things are manufactured, imagined that the wing walls were this wall and the other wall, not including the back wall and not including any interior walls. I would picture basically assembly of this thing, like you could lay this down and the other side down, and it makes wings, right? So in my head, those were wing walls. Since they were, I thought, going to replace this entire wall, I also asked them as a kind of add-on to as compensation for the fact that this has wasted so much time and money. I said, since you're replacing the entire walls on both sides anyway, and that means you're going to be replacing all these decals, could you replace it with the red and black color scheme instead of the blue and black one that I have here? And they did not correct me that I was under the assumption they were replacing the entire wall. They didn't say anything about that. They said they would look into the decal thing, and then later I heard back to them that they would have to special order the red and black decals, but they had the blue and black decals in stock or available. So that's what they said was the reasoning for not doing the decal switch. Apparently wing walls are actually just this section, which I guess on some units is a separate piece that you can actually replace just the wing wall. So anyway, they said they were going to replace the wing walls, and so I would assume that means they're going to make some sort of splice along the supports right here and somehow join these two pieces together and then blend them together nicely so it would look good, right? Now, I can definitely verify that they did not replace the entire walls, because this is the spot where the dealership logo was that I peeled off and accidentally peeled some extra stuff here. So I know for a fact that they did not replace anything from this point backwards. And also, when I look up closer, you can see it's, one, still dirty from my my sister's family's road trip, and two, if you look above the window, you can see these scratches in the paint. Those are actually from me after I tried to reseal this window and did a bad job, and then had to pull the silicone back off. I used a small blade of some sort, and so I left all these scratch marks on there. And so that tells me that for certain they did not replace the outside of either of these wing walls. I think this is still also my sealant job across the top of the window. It looks like my work and not professional work, so I'm guessing that's my stuff too. I don't think they resealed that. They did, however, replace this trim that I had taken off of badly and then put back on. They have certainly replaced all of that because it's no longer kinked and bent. So that was good. So once again, we're back to the roof, and you can see for sure that none of this roof was replaced. And the reason I know that is this Decals is still the original old unrefreshed Decals, and so they would have had to pull this up to get to these bolts to get the liner up and replace any of this roof up here. So they definitely didn't do that. They also told me that part of the reason things were taking so long to get back was that they were waiting for delivery from the fiberglass contractor to give them a new nose bubble, or whatever you want to call it. This nose fiberglass. They said they were waiting on a delivery from this, and that took like a couple weeks or something like that. But you can tell, again, this Decals is still the old stuff. So therefore, that was never replaced. Also, towards the end of things, they told me, oh, sorry for that delay after not communicating for a while, but we were waiting on the delivery of the decal that goes on that new fiberglass piece. That would be this decal here. That is most certainly still the old one. It's got dirt and stuff on it, also from me and from my sister's road trip, but there was no reason to replace that because they didn't replace the nose. So they just kind of lied to me about that. It didn't really need replaced because it's the fiberglass piece. The water soaking on that doesn't really hurt anything as far as I'm aware. But it just is frustrating that they blatantly lied about what was taking so long and what they were waiting on. So they didn't replace that. They didn't replace any of this roof, even though they said they would. They did reseal this stuff, and it looks okay on this side. It looks better on this side. This one I'll probably have to kind of touch up to be more confident in. I might also pull up some of this trim once again to really inspect things, but I'll get to that later because I'm probably going to be talking to the manufacturer tomorrow to try to see what's going on here and why this is so bad. So now you've seen a bunch of examples of what they did not do, a bunch of proof of what was not replaced or repaired. So now we can get to what they did do. And the one thing that I believe I can give them credit for is this panel at the bottom of the cab over area. This all looks very clean. The sealant on these edges and stuff looks new. It doesn't look like my jobs, it looks like real jobs. So I do believe, and the inside confirms this, that they replaced that piece. So from here to here, that rectangle with the cutout for the cab. I believe they replaced that. I am fairly confident that has been replaced, which is good. That is a big... that is the majority of where things were really just sitting and soaking, so that is the primary goal to get rid of. But there is still risk of delamination on this stuff on both walls. The roof is still soggy and soft. When I step on it, you saw I was basically still squishing. Let's see, this still squishy. So there's definitely still moisture in there. You can also see that when they redid this liner stuff, they didn't tighten it down. There's like a bubble in the liner now, which doesn't seem optimal. I don't know if that causes any problems or not, but so now you've seen the one thing I give them credit for. We'll go back inside in a little bit and show you the inside, and the more proof that was actually replaced. I know previously at the dealer, they just kind of covered things up and quote-unquote replaced it. by just gluing on new pieces and leaving the damaged stuff down below. So anyway, that I think is good. That'll give a thumbs up on. Now let's get to the rest of the good stuff. So as the delivery guy was unhitching his car, I did a walk around of the RV to see if there was any obvious damage or anything like that. And first thing I noticed was this antenna is missing. There are no threads or anything that I can see there, so I don't think it was just like unscrewed missing. I think it snapped off somehow. I think this is actually the base of the antenna and maybe the threaded part. I don't know, it's hard to tell, but I definitely don't see any threads inside of there. So somehow this antenna broke off. My sister's family took pictures while they were giving it to the transport to go to the manufacturer, and there's a picture that obviously shows the antenna there. So I know it was there and good when it left their property to go to the manufacturer. So I don't know if it was the transport company or the manufacturer that broke the antenna off, but yeah, that's missing. Once the transport guy was off and on his way, I started up the RV to drive it to the next spot. And immediately noticed a couple things here. First off, the gas gauge is so low that the dummy light is on right now. Not sure if you can tell. Yeah, there it is, dummy light. And that was a little bit frustrating, especially since if you look at the transport company's sheet, it says, please return to delivery with a quarter tank of fuel. And that is, I think because it had a quarter tank of fuel when it left my sister's house, and so they were trying to match what they originally got it at. So, quarter tank of fuel, that does not look like a quarter tank to me, and the dummy light is on. So that's a little bit frustrating. Secondly, look right beside that dummy light. This is the airbag light, the airbag / safety system light, which is also on. And that stayed on for the whole drive over to my driveway. And I have since figured out why it's on, and we'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, so far, not looking so great. So since the decals on the outside were a no-go because they needed special order, they didn't have them available or whatever, I think they just didn't want to actually replace them since they weren't doing the wall stuff I originally thought they were. Anyway, since that was all a no-go, they did agree to 2 other add-ons that I suggested. So let's take a look at the first add-on that they promised. So this is the passenger seat in the front, and I knew that the 2018 models of this, so this is a 2017 model, the 2018 models replaced the pedestal that these seats sit on with a rotating one. They put it on a kind of a lazy Susan sort of thing that allows them to spin around. And so I requested as one of the add-ons to replace the pedestals on both of these so they could pivot around and be used in the living space rather than just being driving seats. And they agreed to that. Unfortunately, since the driver's seat is one of the electronic models, the electronic adjustment models, they were unable to do it on that one. But the passenger seat is the old school just handle slider, so they were able to do it on that one. Now, unfortunately, in the process of installing this, so they managed to clip the wire on one side. So this is a 2-wire cable that basically goes to the sensors in the seat to tell it whether or not someone's sitting there, and whether or not to deploy airbags and lock up seat belts and stuff like that. And they cut one of the wires to it. So right now, if someone were sitting in the passenger seat when I drove around, it is not guaranteed that the airbag would go off. So safety hazard, wonderful. That's what's causing the light in the dashboard to stay on. And that brings me to the other add-on I requested. So the other add-on I requested, other areas of the RV. This is over the bed. There's a vent here, and this vent has a max fan in it, sometimes referred to as a fantastic fan, but I think that's a branding difference. So this is a max fan. It has an on-off button and 4 speeds, and also over top of it, it has a cover over the vent, so I can leave it open through rain and stuff like that, and not worry about water getting in. It has a vent over it. I can also leave it open when I'm driving to get some extra ventilation going on. So you can see that is a nice little vent to have. And there's also an identical one here. So this is over the kitchen area. Same sort of thing. These are really nice full across the vent fans. They cover up the corner areas, so you get really nice, powerful airflow going through it. When I turn these things on, you can hear they really push air. I like these fans a lot, and I like the covers over top of them as well. So anyway, I've got 2 of them here, the one over the bed, the one over the kitchen. So I asked as one of my add-ons, could they also put one of those fans on the vent in the garage. Now, they warned me that because there was no really good electrical access up by this fan, that it would be tied into the same circuit as these lights. And I was fine with that. They did give me warning on that one. I figured I'd come up with my own custom solution later, run my own wires somehow, and take care of that later. But anyway, so I was aware of that problem. But what I was not ready for was the fact that they put one of these in, which is an uncovered vent. It has nothing over the top of it. It is just this little plastic 4-inch whatever fan. And it's just an on-off switch. Terrible airflow, doesn't really do a whole lot. It's the same sort of fan that's in the bathroom. I verified with the manufacturer multiple times that they were going to put the same style, same company, same vent fans that were in the living and bed area in the garage. They verified that with me. They said, yeah, absolutely, it's going to be the same one. I verified that multiple times. And then they put that crap in the garage, which does not accomplish the tasks that I wanted at all. I wanted to be able to leave that vent open while I'm driving, leave that vent open in the rain when people are sleeping back here. So that's really unfortunate. Both add-ons, they managed to somewhat fail. The vent add-on for sure. The seat add-on does rotate. It's kind of a pain in the butt to rotate the seat around, but that's not their fault. But they cut the airbag sensor cable in the process, so that's frustrating. And before I take this thing in for a safety inspection, I'm going to have to fix that myself and get the soldering pencil out. So at least I know how to do that stuff, but I should not have to do that when it comes back from the manufacturer. So anyway, moving on. Other thing that I noticed when I got it was that the cup holders were on the wrong side of this bed thing. They put the bed back together. I've since taken it somewhat apart here, but you can see the cup holders and my USB charger are on the same side as the TV. So now your feet can have a cup holder. Yeah, wonderful. All they really had to do to figure out which way to do this was go Google the RV, and you can see in the cab over bunk sleeping area, it obviously shows the cup holders in the front left corner. So I don't know what they were thinking there. That's really frustrating. I'm going to have to take this apart and switch things around, but whatever, not the end of the world. However, while taking this apart to start that process, I noticed that they put, so this larger frame was obviously on this side, and it had this channel back behind it. So when I pulled this bed frame thing away to start taking this apart, I discovered that there is now a wire behind it. So maybe that's why they put things together backwards, because now there's a wire over here that didn't used to be here, and they needed to cover it up. I don't fully understand it, but anyway, I think there was originally a wire embedded in this component, this big square at the bottom, and so since that cable is no longer through there, since they did replace, as far as I am aware, they did actually replace this whole section, they just had to run the wire separately. So they ran it inside here and covered it up with this thing and put the bed together backwards. So I'll have to find a good way to cover that up with the other wood when I flip this bed around. While I was up here checking things out, I also noticed my screen is now missing from this window. I don't know where it went. Maybe I just need to look through all the storage compartments in this thing, see if I can find it somewhere. But I'm guessing it's still up in Indiana at the manufacturing plant. So that's frustrating. But now that we are up at the wall area, we can see what I think they did replace of the walls. So let's take a look at that. Basically, you can see a really obvious, ugly tape line here that starts to suggest some things. Yeah, this thing is really flexible and gross. This is a really bad joint. It's just ugly. It's peeling up from the top. So that was obviously part of their repair. I also found some slightly better executed tape lines here, here, and here. So I think what they did was just like the dealership repaired the bed area by cutting the top layer off and then just trying to glue a new layer on top. I think the manufacturer did that same thing with these walls. Instead of replacing the wing walls, they cut, and this is just my interpretation of things as far as I can tell, what they did was they cut here, here, and there, and took out just that piece of luan. Now, there's still going to be damaged wood at the bottom of this. There's still going to be damaged wood and water-soaked insulation and stuff in between. They did not actually replace everything. All they did was replace the visible chunk right there to make it look like things were replaced. So that is maybe new. They very well could have also just replaced this, the wallpaper stuff, stuck something over top of it to make it look clean. I don't know. I don't want to blame them for that because I can't tell for sure. They may have chopped that out and replaced it with wood. But anyway, they did not actually replace the full wing wall assembly, obviously. They did something along the lines of cut that inside piece and replace that. And if we look at the other side, we see a similar story. Now, this tape line, for all I know, could still be the original. I think there was one there. So they may not have replaced anything on this side. I'm not going to know for sure until I take this stuff out and really get a better look at the wood at the base of this. But I'm guessing they didn't actually replace anything on this side. There definitely was water running down inside this wall as well. They said they were going to replace both sides. It's hard to know for sure. All right, so I got this side of the bed taken apart to do the switch over for the most part. I haven't got this off yet. I think I'm gonna have to get screwdrivers inside here somehow. But anyway, I can leave that there for now. Instinct is telling me nothing on this wall was replaced. They appear to have added some more tape over some of the stuff that I accidentally chewed up when I was doing my custom installation with the plastic stuff here. I had to chop away at the wall a little bit, and I think they covered up my damage right here, which would suggest that none of this was replaced. I think this is still, nope, they put the tape over top of that. So they replaced this. I don't know. It's hard to know for sure. I'd be willing to bet nothing over here was replaced on the wing wall portion. But anyway, as I did this, I also noticed that they decided to mutilate this cup holder in an effort to run my cables for the USB charger. This little guy, this was a addition that I did, and they have now mutilated it. So they mutilated the cup holder in order to get the wire in properly, and also pinch these wires. I'm not sure if anything's exposed yet. I haven't looked at them closely, but they kinked the wires pretty well there. I'm guessing I'm gonna have to replace this cable. Yeah, hard to know for sure. I'll have to look at that closer. But yeah, so this cup holder is supposed to go on that side, and now it's mutilated in that corner that's on the wrong side for where the wire's even going to go. This could have been done in a much better way. I don't know why they did it that way. That looks terrible. If they did replace it, like I said, the outside has shows signs of being the original, so they would have done the same sort of thing that I was talking about the other side, where they may have just cut this inside piece of wood, luan, whatever you want to call it, and replace that. But there's still going to be plenty of moisture, mold, rot, and delamination on the rest of the layers. So not ideal. I'm not sure if I already mentioned this. It took them 3 more months to do this work. I was really patient with them. I was understanding because I was assuming that they were replacing at least big portions of the outside walls and the roof, which would mean like really kind of taking things apart and rebuilding them. So I was like, yeah, 3 months is a reasonable time frame for that. And it seemed to sound like that's what they were doing from the feedback I was getting from them. But now that I've gotten this back and realized that the only real thing they replaced was the base of the bed area, 3 months seems way longer than that should have taken. And it's just kind of adds to the frustration for all this wasted time that I could have been doing trips. And they've had it up there. I thought they were rebuilding it to make it beautiful and better than new. But all in all, took 3 months to do basically nothing and screw more stuff up. So, yep. I really got my hopes up that Thor was finally taking pride in their product and really going to treat the customer right, do things right, and basically give me a proper, like new RV. But unfortunately, I am once again disappointed. They did not do what they promised. They did not replace the things I was expecting them to replace, except the base of the bed. I will give them that. The add-ons they generously offered to provide as compensation for all the time and money I've wasted on this process. They managed to screw up both of them, so that's not very optimistic. Yeah. Not sure if I'm going to have to break out a lawyer in this process or what the next step is, but I'll be sending this video on to Thor to see what they think about all this. And see what step we want to go to next. I definitely want to get this stuff taken care of, because it's really frustrating to have a brand new RV that's leaking and now rotting and mildewing and molding through the walls, both sides of none other than the bed area. So you can sleep with mold by your feet, mold by your head, mold everywhere. Thanks for watching, guys. Sorry this was such a long thing, a long video. I just wanted to give you a really thorough overlook at the hopefully not final, but the result at this point before I call back Thor and see what else we can do. So one more thing. Sorry, this video will end eventually, I promise. But as I was about to go inside, I just remembered that we actually don't know if they fixed the leak or not. After all this, since they didn't actually replace the wing walls on either side, I don't know if they left my sealant job at the top or if they redid it. It's hard to tell without like taking that trim apart, because they put the die core back over top of up there. I actually replaced the seal tape under that trim on the driver's side, but I didn't do it on the passenger side yet because I thought they were replacing it. That side might still be leaking water. I think I fixed this side, assuming they left my sealant job as it was. it's hard to know for sure, and especially since they covered up, since all of this is where the water kept pooling, I can't see now if there's water back there or not. So I might have to just kind of leave the bed apart. At least I can see in these corners if any obvious water is getting in. So that will help be an indicator, but it's really hard to know since they didn't actually replace things. Am I going to be back to square one here after the first couple rainfalls because they didn't actually fix the leak? You saw that new Dicor on the roof covering up that stuff again, but I think the leak was actually happening in the trim area, and that part they didn't actually really do anything. I think they replaced the trim, obviously. I don't know if they replaced the trim on the passenger side. I don't think they did. I think that's still the original trim. But yeah, it's hard to know if they did anything under there. Maybe I'll have to take the trim apart eventually to get a better look and see. But yeah, so after all this, it may put me back to square one. It may still be leaking. They may have replaced all this, and I'm still going to have to do it again here in the near future. So yeah, not super optimistic about that. I might have to do some thorough take-apart investigation eventually. But for now, I'm just going to see what the manufacturer wants to do with all this. So we'll see what develops tomorrow when I call them.